Thank you again, Nicholas, and warmly welcome to Your Excellency, Mr. Kitack Lim. If you don't mind, I think I will carry on with Kitack if you're okay with that.
All the time.
So we had a very good panel exchange on how the energy landscape was changing. And now, naturally, the focus will be on the regulatory landscape. And as the Secretary General of the IMO, you are definitely in the middle of that. And I think we will try and cover 3 areas. So one will be decarbonization. The second one will be around geopolitics. And then we will touch a little bit on people towards the end. Are you good to go?
I'm thinking my brain is working to prepare for that questions.
So, you know, with the IMO, I think now there are 175 member states. And we know that June is a very busy month and the MEPC will be coming up. And some people might think that managing 175 different nation states is like herding cats. And I'm sure that you will come back to a little bit of the challenges. But if we look then to the greenhouse gas negotiations, and they have been in many ways at the centerpiece of both of your tenures at the IMO. And what do you think about the progress that has been made? And do we see a convergence amongst the members of the way forward?
Thank you, Knut, for giving me this opportunity to say a few words. And I'm very pleased to be here to meet all distinguished participants. When it comes to decarbonization, I believe it was a very unique experience. More confrontation, more divergence of the different views among member states. Not only member states, there has been a huge voices from environment, the civic group, and the industry as well. But overall, I definitely say it has been very, very successful. It may not be certain disruptive and radical decision, may not be fast, facilitating decision, but it has been very democratic discussion, consultation among member states, between member state and the private sector as well. So that has been progressing step by step based on consultation on the different views. So I really would like to take this opportunity to thank all IMO member states, not only developing countries. I have to really appreciate the effort of developed countries to be cooperating to date. And also I'd like to express my deep thanks to develop the advanced country as well. At the same time, I really thank support and effort sweat from private sectors, industry. So overall, very successful. Now we are just 1 month away from our decision making in the middle of July. So I really appreciative of all the efforts and the commitment from public sector and the private sector as well.
Following up on that, Kitack, you know, there are some criticism around the influence on the private sector on the IMO, but you highlight this as a very valuable contribution. But I think it's quite unique in the UN sort of family that you have so much, say, industry participation.
Oh, you know, maybe I myself, as a person, maybe different from others, but I have been keep talking from 2016, positive contribution from industry, whether yes or no, because end user of the IMO regulation convention, they are private sector companies and the seafarers, management of shipping company within the maritime cluster. So I really appreciate their different views, their positive influence. Without that kind of influence, how do we enjoy our daily life? So I really appreciate the input from the private sectors.
Thank you. We also appreciate a lot to be able to be heard. Coming back to, you mentioned the MEPC18 now in June. What are your expectations? And I think many of us here in the audience will be wondering, will there be more ambitious 2050 targets coming?
There has been, we have a certain element, vision, level of ambition, and economic measure, and then the policy to address the impact of developing, that is in the name of impact assessment. And then finally, we have to adopt a certain time plan for the future. This is a key element. But overall, if you look back, when we decided, adopted the first inertial strategy, April 2018, before that, the huge debate and discussion, sometimes a confrontation, but eventually IMO succeeded to adopt inertial strategy. That was April, 5 years ago. Now we are approaching to the final stage to adopt the mid-long-term strategy. So I believe at this the MEPC, some policy decision, some other one main principle, particularly relevant to economic measure, I think that will be a very successful outcome. But at the moment, still some gap between the government and some part of the world. But we are having a very close consultation discussion about that element. As I mentioned, some element, vision, level of ambition, economic measure. So I think there will be a very successful one. But I have to say at this moment, it may not be 100% perfect like a conclusion, but will be very successful outcome, subject to the further continuous our efforts to that final day.
Thank you. I guess that's as close as you can get to the outcome and what you expect. The EU ETS is being introduced as of next year, and carbon pricing is naturally also, I guess, something that is being discussed in IMO circles. Any reflections on that?
Oh yes, this is very natural to say about that. European Union now 28 and now 27 member states, and more or less located in the same region. While IMO members, 175, located in different regions, and many more countries are developing countries. It takes longer, okay. And when it comes to the economic measure, used to be called the market-based measure, I believe this is essential. Technical measure, technical requirement, including global fuel standard, or we talking about the CII, so EEXI, EDI, whatever. However, economic measure is essential, okay? And the European countries has been trying to implement ETS already a few years earlier, Now, eventually, they are implementing. But I see there is a positive element because the decision-making process at IMO longer than European Union. So I had a meeting, COP26 in Glasgow. I had a bilateral meeting, 13 member of parliament of the European Union, and myself talking about economic measures. So they highlighted, very emphasized importance of European trading ETS, and then I explained the general sentiment of the IMO member state, and then I heard, they see eventual global solution, not the regional one. So that's why, as I mentioned, IMO, we are definitely adopt the not only technical policy, but important principle regarding economic measure in July. With that, I definitely believe European Union support the global solution. Once the IMO solution when enter into force. But at this moment, I see positive element of the European Union's policy. In a way, some part of the industry members, they may not be happy, but I see it is working also in positive way, encouraging global community move forward to the decarbonizing policy in terms of economic measure. So I see it is a positive, and then we work together when we implement the IMO's global solution.
Thank you very much. Naturally, we feel very fortunate to have a global regulator in the IMO, and naturally we are also somewhat concerned that there are regional regulators that sort of makes it quite difficult to carry out with the global trade. But I would like to maybe come a little bit to your, maybe also beyond regulations. What do you see as the main obstacle for decarbonizing shipping, if I may ask?
When it comes to the certain consultation process, how to narrow the gap, different views. As I mentioned, despite a certain difficult, challenging time, it has been, I believe, very successful to date. But when it comes to practical aspect of challenges, this is definitely production of alternative fuels, and then relevant infrastructure. So once IMO adopt basic policy following the initial strategy of policy in July, then I believe, based on that one, IMO will develop a more detailed policy that will give more certainties to the not only member state, also certain to the private shipping company as well. Not only shipping company, shipbuilding, repair, oil and energy industry, etc. So we will give a certain certainty. With that, this kind of challenge, production of alternative fuel and infrastructure, this will be facilitated. We need a fund, IMO need a fund to help not only member state and help industry. So with as I mentioned, economic measure, which is expected to generate the funds, this fund will be used in very wisest way. Incentives to shipping company, technology R&D, and helping small island country, and also helping other developing country. We call it disproportionate negative impact country. We help, and then how to help? We believe that money can be also used to provide for infrastructure for future energy supply chain.
And building on what you just said on producing the fuels and creating the infrastructure, but what would you say to the audience here? What can shipping companies and those, say, stakeholders in this audience do?
What's your point?
what can this group do to sort of accelerate the decarbonization of shipping? What would be your sort of recommendation to this group?
When it comes to this one, this group, I say, mixed of the shipping company, or I don't know how much from energy industry as well. But there is already a very good level of the support for the decarbonization. But it could look like a chicken egg game. Shipping community, energy industry, shipyard, repair, etc., bunkering service. How we motivate all these stakeholders invest as expected, as needed. That's why, as I mentioned, once you make a decision, and it would give a clear picture, and with the development of the more detailed requirement, it would give more clear certainty to all stakeholders. This is a key. Without this one, very hard to facilitate development of alternative fuel and providing infrastructure, including bunkering service. So that is the most important. That's why once the IMO make decision, I hope private sector particularly definitely support, rely on, count on the IMO's policy, and hope you are motivated to make appropriate investment, not only shipping company, other stakeholders as well. That's why I'm really highly emphasize importance of the decision making, particularly in the policy side. And also I'm looking forward to more closer collaboration. With this one, I was going to mention, once we make a decision in July, IMO is going to organize like a round table discussion among stakeholders. We have experience in 2019 when we preparing implementation IMO 20 low sulfur fuel issues. We gathered together and exchanged views how we collaborate each other. I think in a way that work very possibly. So we need much more higher level of collaboration among the stakeholders on this element.
Thank you very much. If you now change over to geopolitics, and we've had the invasion of Ukraine. Naturally, we also talked about this morning about the so-called grey fleet. And of course, before that, we also have COVID. How has this influenced the work of IMO, and has it been, say, challenging to deal with this?
Actually, if I recall COVID time, it make me depressed and sad, almost 2.5 years. But that time, not on worked positively, strengthening solidarity between myself and my wife, living only in London. But the seafarers suffered a lot during COVID. As you know well, vaccination issues, crew changes, a huge challenge to shipping. But in a way, I don't talk about the impact, the commercial impact to the shipping business, but anyhow, seafarers suffered a lot. And again, since February last year, we are experiencing the Black Sea issues, military confrontation. That caused also a huge impact to shipping. Still, over 60 ships are stranded. It used to be over 1,500 seafarers stranded, but most of them left. But some little foreign third-party seafarers still there. But now several majority seafarers stay there is from Ukraine. But that anyhow, it has been impacting very negatively to shipping. But with that, what we are doing, we are working, when it comes to seafarers issues, we already working with the IRO, the cooperation IRO, IMO. But recently, I invited the new Director General of head of the IRO to IMO. We had a bilateral meeting, and we are strengthening our efforts to review current legal system, current the practices to find out the area to improve further. That is one. And the second one, this autumn, I think it is maybe the first event. The event will be organized between IMO and IRO, focusing on human element seafarers issues. There will be much more higher collaboration between IMO and IRO. There is we are working, and also in the course of we have a lot of the collaboration, like a shipping community, ICS, and ITF, Intermanager, Intertanko, and BIMCO, etc. They worked hard, and related also seafarer related the NGOs like IPSMA, etc. So that effort, collaboration will be enhanced. With that, shipping ships stranded still in the Ukraine port, but there is will be a separate effort is underway. I cannot disclose yet, but having a successful example of the grain initiative, but we will have some further consultation how to evacuate the ships stranded in that area. But finally, I believe IMO take advantage of this development to look at the social status, international status of seafarers. At the same time, we have to enhance international reputation of international shipping, how contribute to global economy and global trade. So this is what we are thinking.
Thank you very much. Coming a little bit back to geopolitics, so there is many of us that feel that the friction in geopolitics is increasing these days. Does that create a challenge for the IMO to sort of gather around the progress that you want to achieve in the areas that we have discussed?
What do you mean
So, for instance, we have the situation with Russia in Ukraine. There are certain discussions between China and the US about geopolitics over Taiwan. I know these are very highly political issues, but I was just wondering, in the context of the IMO, does that sort of create further obstacles beyond sort of the decarbonization ambition levels that might be different amongst the member states?
IMO is one of UN system. Definitely, IMO, is in a way affected the development of the global geopolitical scene, which mainly taking place in the United Nations. But if I look back, despite those challenges, but we have been making progress. Still, that challenge is going on, but overall, we have been making good progress. But when it comes to the decarbonization policy, our member state industry have been more wiser than before to handle that challenges outside the IMO. So I think we will be successful despite of this kind of political scene.
It's good that you are optimistic on this issue. Coming back, you mentioned about the seafarers and naturally COVID, how that has impacted the attractiveness. There's another issue as well, and that is sort of to attract more women to the industry and also to attract young talents to the industry. And I know that you are also very much concerned around these issues. Any reflections?
Particularly, when we, as I mentioned, talk about the COVID time and the challenge, hardship to seafarers, I'm talking often with the current practices, how we easily encourage young people to join shipping community, particularly seafarers as a profession, really hard. Young people around the world, they were very disappointed to see how the whole world responding COVID in terms of treatment of the seafarers, crew change, and vaccination as well. I know certain number of countries, mainly most from European countries, they are trying to help the seafarers from the beginning, really appreciative of that. But this is situation, okay? That's why I'm talking collaboration with the ILO, how to review and how to improve the current system. So now we have a much more collaboration with the ILO, IMO. We're talking about the relevant convention of each side. So we help IMO helping MLC to promote the implementation, ratification, access to the MLC to be more widely implemented. That's why in line with that, as I mentioned, we organize certain very, very high-level conference in London, jointly IMO and ILO to look up. So the one, we have to do, I mentioned openly, in terms of the union of different profession, seafarers, union status, because of the nature of business, not strong. They are working scattered around the world. That's why public sector and the management of the shipping community, we have to work together to help. When it comes to women in maritime, I'm making me very happy. Although IMO has been working for women development in maritime, but in 2019, we started a campaign empowering women in maritime community. Since then, extremely successful. Many more like Vista Trade and the Shipping Women Association, many more maritime women in the maritime community established around the world. Around the world, particularly developing country, women engagement in maritime sector, very highly motivated. However, we have to continue. And as you remember, we adopted 18th of May as of International Maritime Women Day. Extremely successful. This year, extremely successful. So we will continue to promote that one, that campaign, to be more progressive in the future.
Great. And as time is really running fast, and maybe two quick questions towards the end. In your view, what is your legacy at the IMO? And secondly, what's next for Kitack Lim? How will you be remembered from your time at the IMO, and what's next for Kitack Lim?
My term end of December, I'm really honored to serve the International Maritime Organization and really appreciate all support, not only member state and the industry as well. Really, really honored to serve you. But at this moment, still some 6 months, it may not be appropriate for me to say myself, my own legacy at the moment. But I can say at least one element. I believe, and I would say, member state, we agree to my point. We have been enhancing more friendship among member states and then industry as well. More social gathering, social conversation. That was a fundamental platform for our progress of, for instance, policy issues, decarbonization, low sulfur issues, ballast issues, and the mass issue as well. It has been working positively, But at the moment, I believe I have been contributing in like a friendship building among all stakeholders. So, but that I hope that practice and legacy continue to stay after I left the IMO.
Thank you very much, Kitack. It's been a true pleasure talking to you this morning, and thank you very much for spending the time with us. And on behalf of everyone in the audience, we are great supporters of the IMO, and we also think that you and the team have done a terrific and great job. So thank you very much for that.
One element I have to add, since the Knut, you are from the classification society, prominent. Classification society is extremely important. Class society is stated in the middle. Government and insurance, seafarers, managed company, all shipyard, shipyard. So class society function extremely important, not only like supporting industry, but also supporting member state government as well. In that sense, I looking forward to more enhanced collaboration between IMO and the class societies to exchange views, to help each other. In line with that, I really appreciate your leadership, not only to DNV, but also to the whole classification society group, and also to the whole the shipping industry as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.